My parents gave my college fund to my brother, but I got a scholarship they couldn't steal. They say betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it arrives in silence, wrapped in family smiles, served warm over dinner. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, like you were screaming underwater while the world kept laughing, you'll understand why this story still burns beneath my skin. I am Amelia, and if you're wondering how I survived having my dreams stolen right out from under me by the people I called family, stay with me. Because I didn't just survive. I rose. If you are wondering why, let me tell you where this began. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button to join me through this wild journey of betrayal and unexpected triumph. I was 22 when the illusion of family shattered into pieces so sharp they almost cut away who I was becoming. I wasn't perfect, but I was determined, focused, brilliant, some professors called me. I had worked for every grade, every sleepless night, every opportunity. But in my home, none of it ever seemed enough. Not when compared to my golden brother, Oliver. He was charismatic, charming, with a guitar always slung across his shoulder like a crown. My stepfather, Liam, adored him. My mother, Megan, just smiled and nodded through it all, like a background character in someone else's life. And me? I was the afterthought, the also in every family sentence. But there was one man who never saw me as less. My father, my real father, Elijah. He may have divorced my mother, but he never divorced me. When I was 17, he took me aside with tears in his eyes and handed me a promise. $300,000 placed in a secure fund for my education. For your future, Amelia, he said, because I know what you're capable of, even if they don't. That money wasn't just paper. It was love, protection, belief. It was my lifeline. But if you're wondering why I'm telling you this, let me take you to the moment everything cracked. It was just after Oliver announced he was launching his music album, a vanity project dripping with false hope and dollar signs. He stood in our living room, grinning ear to ear, while Liam clapped him on the back and Megan poured champagne. I stood frozen, confused, because none of them had jobs. None of them had the kind of money Oliver was suddenly flashing. And then Liam turned to me with that hollow smile of his and said, "Oh, and Amelia, we had to reallocate some funds. You won't be needing all of that for college, right?" My heart stopped. "What funds?" I asked, already knowing, already falling. Megan avoided my eyes. Oliver looked confused. And Liam? Liam was proud. "The college fund your father set up, well, we figured it's all in the family, right? And Oliver's album could launch something big. Think of it as an investment for all of us." I felt my knees go weak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The room tilted. My stomach turned. This couldn't be real. "But that money was for my degree, my future. It's mine." Liam scoffed. "You're so ungrateful, Amelia, always thinking only of yourself. Your brother is chasing his dream. Try supporting him for once." Megan stayed silent. Silent like she always had. Silent when Liam criticized me. Silent when I cried myself to sleep. Silent even now, as my entire future crumbled before her. "Mom?" I whispered, hoping, begging, for just one shred of protection. But she just looked down at her glass and said softly, "Your stepfather thought it was best." And right there, the world I had fought to build cracked into ash. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse, though my soul wanted to. Instead, I walked out of that house and never looked back. I left behind the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal so thick it still haunts me in my dreams. I walked into my dorm room with nothing but a duffel bag and a scholarship rejection letter in my pocket, because I had planned to use my father's fund and missed most deadlines. But I had something else now. Fire. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones who were supposed to protect you, then you already know. Nothing hurts quite like a mother's silence or a father's cruelty. But pain, when carried correctly, becomes power. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment I stopped needing anyone's permission to shine. Because this is only the beginning. The air at the dinner table was thick with pretense. A performance so rehearsed, it reeked of arrogance. Candles flickered above polished silver, casting long shadows over people I used to call family. Liam carved the roast with a serenity that made me sick, humming as if my entire future wasn't bleeding out beneath his blade. Megan poured wine with the grace of a woman who had long since traded her soul for silence. And Oliver, he tapped his spoon gently against his water glass, his eyes darting anywhere but toward mine. I sat among them, invisible yet burning with fury. I wasn't their daughter. I wasn't their sister. I was collateral. "Let's not ruin dinner with drama," Liam said finally, not bothering to mask his smug tone. "This family's been through enough." My hands trembled beneath the tablecloth. "This family," I whispered, "robbed me blind." Liam scoffed, dabbing his mouth with his linen napkin. "It wasn't robbery, it was redirection. You'll bounce back. You always do." The entitlement in his voice sliced deeper than any betrayal. My father entrusted me with that money. $300,000 meant to safeguard my dreams, and they rerouted it to Oliver's pipe dream album, as if my future was a luxury they couldn't afford. Megan didn't say a word. Not even a flicker of regret crossed her face. Just a complicit, vacant stare as she sipped her overpriced wine. "You didn't just steal my college fund," I said, my voice cold and cutting. "You mutilated my trust. You violated everything good that was left in this house." Oliver finally looked at me, guilt blooming behind his eyes like a storm. "Amelia, I didn't know. I thought Dad was using savings, or—" I leaned in, voice trembling with rage. "You didn't ask because you didn't want to know. Ignorance is comfortable when it benefits you, right?" He looked away, shame silencing him. Liam laughed, low and condescending. "Stop acting like the world owes you something, Amelia. Your father's generosity didn't come with a leash. We used it where it mattered, for the family." For the family. Always the same line, as if betraying me somehow strengthened their dysfunctional dynasty. I stood slowly, the chair scrape against the floor, sounding like a scream. My eyes locked onto Megan's, searching for any flicker of maternal instinct. Nothing, just a void where love should have lived. "You didn't even try to stop him," I said to her. "You let him carve me out of my own future like I was disposable. You didn't even flinch." She looked down, cowardice in its purest form. "I hope Oliver's album goes platinum," I said, my voice venom soft, "because he paid for it with my life's work." "Sit down," Liam growled. But I didn't. I walked away. Not just from the table, from the illusion of belonging. I packed my bags that night and vanished into the cold December rain, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. Back at the dorms, I curled into a borrowed blanket on a borrowed mattress and let the silence devour me. All I had left were broken pieces and an unkillable fire in my chest. That's when Charlotte found me, red-eyed, numb, holding back sobs that threatened to rip me apart. She didn't ask questions. She just handed me a grilled cheese sandwich and said, "You're not alone. Not anymore." That moment, that kindness, saved me. She introduced me to her sister, who landed me a part-time job at a nonprofit. It was mundane, but it paid for food, notebooks, and the kind of dignity Liam tried to erase. I started rebuilding in secret, silently, fiercely. I applied to every scholarship I could find, typed essays until my fingers cramped, begged for letters of recommendation from professors who barely remembered my name. One of them, Dr. James, took a chance on me. He said, "Your mind is lightning in a bottle. It deserves more than this town, this family, this betrayal." His belief in me cracked something open, not just possibility, but purpose. Then came Noah, my academic ally, my quiet revolutionary. He pushed me toward NSF, toward activism, toward becoming someone who refuses to be erased. Meanwhile, Megan never called. Liam sent a passive-aggressive email implying I had tarnished the family's image by talking. I left it unread. Oliver texted me 2 words. "I'm sorry, but regret doesn't refund futures." I didn't respond. I owed him nothing. I worked through every hour of exhaustion. I earned every moment of dignity back with grit, sweat, and silence. Because my revenge wouldn't come through fire. It would come through flight. Through rising so far above them, they'd need a telescope to find me. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of my vengeance. Dressed in degrees, lit by ambition, and wrapped in everything they said I didn't deserve. The silence of my new life wasn't peaceful. It was thunderous. It howled through the gaps left behind by the family who had gutted me. But in that hollow ache, something extraordinary began to bloom. Clarity. I realized then, affection without respect is just emotional currency for the manipulative, and my so-called family had spent me dry. Charlotte became my shelter in that storm. Her tiny dorm room smelled like cinnamon and hope, a place where love wasn't conditional and compassion didn't expire. We weren't blood, but in that raw season of my life, she was more sister than Oliver ever tried to be. She didn't offer pity, she offered plans. "You're too damn brilliant to drown," she told me, sliding a cracked laptop my way. "Let's get your life back." It started there, on borrowed Wi-Fi, half-charged coffee makers, and dreams fueled by Red Bull and rage. Every scholarship, every grant, every application became my battlefield. I wasn't fighting for a degree. I was clawing my name back from the people who tried to erase it. I wrote essays like confessions, every word a wound, every sentence a scar. And somewhere in those paragraphs, I found something sacred. My voice. Dr. James noticed, a seasoned academic with a spine of iron and eyes that saw right through pretense. He stopped me after class one day. "Amelia," he said, his tone deliberate, weighty, "you write like someone who's been forged, not taught. Pain is your ink, but purpose is your pen." His words hit like prophecy. That day, he became more than a mentor. He became my lighthouse. Then came Noah, a quiet disruptor, a teaching assistant with sharp wit and a sharper sense of justice. He read my essays, saw the fire, and threw gasoline on it. "You're NSF material," he said, tapping my notebook. "But more than that, you're the storm academia fears. Don't shrink to fit their comfort." It was the first time someone looked at me and didn't see damage. They saw dynamite. We met late nights in the campus cafe, buried in research and rebellion. He taught me how to turn fury into fuel. I taught myself how to survive without needing permission. Meanwhile, Megan hadn't called, not once. The woman who birthed me was now just a shadow in my memory. Liam had the audacity to send a follow-up email titled, "Family Should Stick Together." I didn't open it. Letting go isn't cruelty when what you're holding is poison. Oliver messaged again. "Wish things were different." Then you should have chosen differently, I thought. But I left him on read. Some ghosts deserve silence. The job Charlotte helped me land, working for Mr. Blake at a local environmental nonprofit, wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He was tough, but fair. Saw my grit. Let me stay late. Paid in actual dignity. You've got the eyes of someone who's been betrayed, he once said, handing me a project lead. That kind of fire doesn't die. It transforms. That line haunted me, in the best way. I didn't go out. I didn't party. While others tasted freedom, I was sewing mine together with paper cuts and sleepless nights. Then came the NSF call. I remember it vividly. Rain against the window, Charlotte asleep, the glow of my phone lighting up like a second sunrise. We're thrilled to offer you a full scholarship, the voice on the other end said. Your essay was unforgettable. I covered my mouth, sobbing in silence, not just for the victory, but for the girl who had once believed love came from obedience. I didn't tell anyone. Not Megan, not Liam, not Oliver. This wasn't their triumph. This was mine. But that night, as I looked out across the city, I knew something deeper was unfolding. My future wasn't just restored. It had been reborn. The love I once begged for at the dinner table had turned to ashes, and I didn't grieve it. I honored it by never seeking it again. I had new love now, knowledge, ambition, fire, and soon I'd have justice, because one day I would return, not as the forgotten stepdaughter, but as a name they'd never be able to scrub from their shame. There's a unique kind of silence that follows victory, the kind that doesn't need applause or witnesses. That was the quiet I carried after securing the NSF scholarship. Not the hush of surrender, but the silence of a storm gathering strength. I didn't post about it. I didn't announce it. I let them all assume I disappeared into failure. Let Megan worry in her kitchen. Let Liam sip his cheap beer, smug and oblivious. Let Oliver chase a dream funded by betrayal. I had no intention of interrupting their ignorance. That silence? It was my revenge symphony. Note by note, at NSF I wasn't just surviving. I was rising. The classes were grueling, the competition cutthroat. But pain had sharpened me. I was no longer the girl crying in her dorm room. I was the woman who walked through fire and came out wearing steel. Noah became my sounding board. Every paper I turned in, every debate I owned, he saw it as another act of defiance. You're rewriting your legacy, he told me one night, handing back a draft. Brick by brick, built on every lie they told you about yourself. Charlotte watched it all with the softest pride. You're glowing, she said once, when I didn't even have makeup on. Like a woman who finally knows she's her own rescue. Mr. Blake noticed too. After months of working weekends and managing projects that should have been above my pay grade, he called me into his office. You ever thought of policy work? He asked, eyeing me carefully. You're not just a hard worker. You're strategic, calculated, the kind of woman who doesn't flinch. I didn't flinch then either. I've had to be, I replied, and that was enough. He offered me a policy internship, a real one. Paid, high level, influential. It was the kind of stepping stone I never would have touched if I'd let Liam's theft define me. One afternoon, during a campus outreach event, fate decided to have its say. I was handing out materials near the children's tent when a small voice chirped, "Hi, my name's Lily." I turned, startled by the familiar brown eyes blinking up at me. It was Oliver's daughter. For a moment, the ground beneath me felt like glass, fragile, reflective, impossible. She held out a drawing, a stick figure family, a rainbow above their heads. My daddy sings. Mommy says he's going to be famous, but I want to be a scientist. I blinked hard. I think you'd be a brilliant one, I whispered, taking her tiny art with trembling hands. She ran off moments later, unaware she'd just handed me the most poetic moment of karma I'd ever known. A little girl, born of the betrayal that nearly broke me, now wanting to follow the very path they tried to block. I didn't hate her. I felt something different. Hope. Maybe the cycle could break. I never reached out to Oliver. There was nothing to say. His choices were etched into my history like a brand, but they didn't define me anymore. And Megan? Megan's silence had become her confession. No emails, no calls. Just the echo of a mother who folded when it mattered most. I buried my need for her approval, like a relic beneath a cathedral I was rebuilding. I didn't need her to come around. I had come around to myself. Liam? A ghost. Occasionally his name would show up in news articles tied to Oliver's struggling album release. It flopped. No traction. No buzz. Just the hollow sound of ambition built on someone else's ruin. And still, I said nothing. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's waking up in a better apartment, sipping coffee you bought with your own money, looking out over a city that once chewed you up and now bows when you walk by. That year, I received a nomination to speak at a national conference. Topic: Resilience in the Face of Systemic Failure. I wrote my keynote like a confession in reverse, starting with the ashes and ending with the fire. Charlotte cried when she read the draft. This is what healing looks like, she whispered, but I wasn't done. One late evening, walking home from the NSF lab, I looked up at the stars and realized I no longer carried their betrayal. I carried my own name now, unburdened, unbent. I wasn't Amelia, the stepdaughter they erased. I was Amelia, the scientist they couldn't silence. Amelia's silence has grown into power, but when the ghosts of her past come knocking, her brother with a heart heavy with regret, her mother with the soft ache of failure, and her stepfather hiding behind silence, she doesn't flinch. She doesn't crumble. She listens, and then she rises. I never expected Oliver to reach out again, especially not after all these years, not after he stood silent while I was stripped of the one thing that could have secured my future. But guilt is a strange ghost. It doesn't knock when it arrives. It haunts until you answer. It started with a message. Simple, hollow. Hey, can we talk? I stared at it for a long while. I wasn't sure what unnerved me more. His sudden need to speak, or the part of me that didn't feel anything. Not anger, not grief, not longing, just stillness. I waited 3 days before I responded. If you want to talk, it has to be face-to-face, public place. We met at a quiet cafe just outside the campus gates. I sat by the window, arms crossed, posture composed, every nerve of mine wrapped in armor. When Oliver walked in, he looked smaller than I remembered, aged, dimmed, no longer the golden child, but a man dulled by consequences he couldn't outrun. He smiled awkwardly. You look amazing, Amelia. I didn't return the compliment. I didn't need to. He sat across from me like a man asking for something he didn't quite know how to request. I owe you an apology. A lot of them, he started, voice thick. Back then, I didn't know they used your college fund. Dad said it was family money and I raised my hand, gently but firmly. Stop. He blinked. You didn't ask questions because you didn't want the answers. You didn't notice because you were never told to look past your own reflection. He looked like I'd hit him, but I wasn't here to comfort the very hand that had clapped while I burned. I should have been better, he whispered, eyes glassy. I was so caught up in chasing music, being the next big thing. I let them destroy you. I leaned forward, my voice low and clean like a blade. They didn't destroy me. They built the version of me sitting right here. So if you came looking for forgiveness, Oliver, you're decades too late and a lifetime too short. He nodded slowly. I don't want anything from you, Amelia. I just wanted you to know I named my daughter Lily because that was your favorite flower. I didn't reply. That was a nice sentiment. It didn't mend betrayal, but it proved he remembered. Later that week, Megan emailed me. Not a call. Of course not. Just a clumsy, over-punctuated message titled, "I miss you." "I know I failed you as a mother," she wrote. "I was scared. Liam was so sure, and I didn't know how to fight him. But I've watched you become everything I hoped you'd be. Please, let me be part of your life again." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Charlotte, who read it aloud in a sarcastic tone and made me tea. "She failed you," Charlotte said softly. "And now that you've bloomed without her, she wants to stand in your garden and take credit for the flowers." Truth burned like gospel. Liam, of course, never reached out. The kind of man who weaponized silence as control, now used it as cowardice. I didn't need his words. I'd outgrown his shadow years ago. Instead of responding to Megan or Oliver, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. It read, "You didn't raise me. You abandoned me quietly, then cheered while someone else clipped my wings. But I learned to fly anyway, not despite you, because of you. Every lie, every theft, every silence gave me direction. You gifted me pain, and I turned it into purpose. So no, you're not welcome in this chapter, because this chapter was written by a woman you tried to erase." I burned that letter in Charlotte's fireplace, the flames licking at the edges like karma with a taste for ink. That weekend, I spoke at the national conference. My keynote was met with a standing ovation, tears, handshakes from women who saw themselves in my journey. Strangers became sisters in shared survival. And that night, as I stood on the hotel balcony with the city lights flickering beneath me, I realized something bone deep. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you take. Gently, firmly, like reclaiming your name from the mouth of someone who mispronounced it too many times. So I let them live in their regrets. I let Megan sit in her silence. I let Oliver raise a daughter who might one day learn about integrity through the stories he doesn't tell. And me? I kept rising. With every step, I shed the weight of their apologies. I didn't need them to make peace. I had already made war and won. There are moments in life that feel like rebirth, quiet, unannounced, but seismic in their shift. For me, it began with a single name etched on a golden plaque. Amelia Grace Elijah, Research Fellow, NSFA. My name, not theirs, not borrowed, not inherited, not stolen, mine, and it shimmered beneath the hall lights like armor forged in flame. Walking into that auditorium, I felt the weight of my past melt off my shoulders like a coat I no longer needed. The air was crisp with intellect, ambition, and the scent of polished oak and purpose. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here because I belonged. The stage was high, the audience vast, a sea of scholars, visionaries, women like me, hungry, brilliant, scarred, unbreakable. Before I spoke, I looked into the mirror backstage. I met my own gaze and whispered, "We did it." Not we. The girl who cried in a locked bathroom as her world collapsed. The teenager who rationed food while her brother posted selfies from luxury studios. The daughter whose mother chose silence over justice. All those versions of me, standing beside me now, silent, whole, victorious. When I took the microphone, there was no tremble in my hand, only clarity. "I am not here because I was given a seat," I began. "I'm here because someone tried to lock the door, and I built my own damn house." Laughter, applause, but also reverence. I told them about scientific resilience, yes, about data and design and the breakthroughs that had shaped my work. But threaded through every statistic was truth born from scars. I spoke about being told no, and choosing yes anyway. I spoke about stolen dreams and the beauty of rebuilding them with better blueprints. And when I finished, the crowd didn't just applaud. They rose, one by one. A standing ovation not for perfection, but for defiance, for survival, for reinvention. That night, Charlotte pulled me into a hug, mascara already running. "You didn't just speak, Amelia," she whispered. "You summoned every woman who was ever made to feel like almost. You gave her a sword." Back in my apartment, a sleek envelope waited at my door. No return address. Inside was an invitation. Founders Summit, keynote speaker request, honorarium, $25,000. I laughed, a sharp, wondrous sound. They were paying me to tell the very story they once tried to silence. Mr. Blake had recommended me, it turned out. The quiet ally I had almost forgotten. He'd seen a clip from my last talk and sent it to the committee. "The world needs your voice," he wrote in a note. "Not just your research." That summit changed everything. My name began circulating in places I once thought unreachable. Fellowships, panels, a book deal offer, invitations to advise high-level STEM policy. But one moment carved itself into my heart forever. A little girl, 7, maybe 8, approached me after a school outreach session I volunteered for. She wore thick glasses, her braids pulled tight, her voice shy. "I want to be just like you," she said. I knelt to her level. "No, baby, you're going to be better." She grinned, gap-toothed and glorious. "Promise?" "Swear on every star in the sky." Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I stood before the mirror again. No stage, no lights, just me. I traced the curve of my jaw, the set of my shoulders, the peace in my eyes. For so long, I had looked for validation from broken people. Now I realized I was never broken. I was never even cracked. I had been reshaped, refined in fire, and now, unshakable. My phone buzzed, a text from Oliver, a picture of Lily holding a science fair ribbon. She said she wants to be a scientist like Aunt Amelia. I smiled, heart aching, not from pain, but from something far deeper. The possibility of healing, the seed of generational redemption. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some stories end with closure. Mine? It was just beginning, with power. I never intended to write this letter. For years, I believed silence was my final word. But today, standing at the edge of everything I've built, with the wind of freedom against my skin and the weight of old pain finally lifted, I realized something. Some things deserve to be spoken, not for them, but for me. So here it is, to Liam, Megan, and even Oliver. Though you are each inked differently into my past, you tried to silence me by drowning my future in the shallow waters of selfishness. You thought that by taking my college fund, you were closing a chapter. You didn't realize you were writing my origin story. Liam, you wore manipulation like a tailored suit, well-fitted, pressed, presentable, but underneath was rot. You smiled as you looted my future. You weaponized your charm, twisted it into a knife, and slid it between my ribs with a father's grin. You weren't a man. You were a mask, and Megan, my mother in name, but never in soul. Your silence was the loudest betrayal. You looked at me when I begged you for protection, for explanation, and you blinked like I was asking too much. Like love was a limited resource, and I'd already used mine up. But your quiet compliance taught me everything I needed to know about power. You taught me that absence can scream just as loud as violence, that a passive hand can still sign away someone's life. So thank you. Because of you, I became everything you feared. Independent, unbending, unowned. I fed myself on nights when your fridge was full for someone else. I studied by flashlight when your lights were bright over Oliver's recording sessions. I walked through fire with no one holding my hand, and emerged baptized in purpose. And to Oliver, I don't hate you. I never did. You were the golden child they polished while they let me rust. You didn't steal my money, but you let it be stolen. And when you realized the cost, you tried, too late, to look for me in the ashes. I hope you're better now. For your daughter's sake, because Lily deserves to grow up in a world where no girl is told that her dreams are disposable. She calls me Aunt Amelia, and that name means more to me than any title I've earned. Not because of what it implies, but because of what it promises, that the cycle ends here. I wrote this letter not to accuse, but to declare, you can't erase me. You never could. You didn't break me. You revealed me. Every rejection was redirection. Every betrayal was a blessing in bloody wrapping paper. You handed me a world where I had to choose, survive or surrender. I chose to rewrite the narrative. I chose revenge, but not the kind that leaves ashes. Mine grew gardens. Mine signed contracts. Mine stood on stages. Mine healed. I built a life so brilliant, your shadows couldn't stain it. I paid for my own degrees. I bought my own car. I fed myself, clothed myself, believed in myself, when no one else would. And now? Now the world knows my name. It's in programs, publications, policies. It echoes in boardrooms and lectures in libraries. And none of you can touch it. Not with regret. Not with apology. Not even with pride. My success is no longer your inheritance. It is mine. Completely, eternally. So no, I won't be coming home for the holidays. I won't answer your emails or pose for your photo albums or explain myself at your dinner parties. I have nothing left to prove because my revenge was becoming untouchable. And if you're reading this now, it means I finally stopped shrinking for your comfort. Signed, Amelia Grace Elijah. The girl you underestimated, the woman who made history anyway. Have you ever had someone who should have supported you, let you down in a major way? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from that experience? Share your story in the comments below. Your journey might inspire someone else who's going through something similar. Right now, if this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it too. And if you want to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayal and building resilience, subscribe to my channel. I share new stories about navigating difficult relationships and finding your own path. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember that your worth isn't determined by others' treatment of you, and sometimes the path that seems most devastating can lead to your greatest strength. You have everything you need within you to create the future you deserve.